Welcome to the Psychedelic Passage podcast. My name is Jimmy Nguyen. I am joined here by my fellow co-founder, podcast partner in crime, Nick Levich. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the Psychedelic Passage podcast. My name is Jimmy Nguyen. About psychedelic here by my fellow co-founder. We barely scratched the surface there, so there's likely more Nick Levich coming up. Joining us, probably do. So we had an episode in the past about psychedelic preparation. We're going to focus on we barely scratched the surface there, so there's likely more content coming up. A lot to cover here. Hours worth of preparation content, but for today, we're going to focus on psychedelic integration is first and foremost, and the importance of a lot to cover here. Intentional, but what psychedelic I think setting would be helpful is even at times where you're not what in intentional setting, whether recreational or more spontaneous. The importance, and then also we'd like to cover some intentional psychedelic practices, common even at times where you're not about the integration process, whether recreational or set more you up spontaneous better. And then also we'd like to cover change, because after all, best practices, I think that's what people are looking for when they're ways of thinking about the integration process that will psychedelic experience set you up a little bit better. So let's dive in. Lasting meaningful change, because after all, Nick, what do you share with folks when you describe when they're approaching integration? Intentional, that you have a client that comes up, or you're talking about psychedelics. Let's dive in. Like integration, what are you talking about? Like what's this word? Nick, like, what do you share with folks?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are wondering this question. And
integration, that you have a client that comes up, or you're talking about psychedelics.
First of all,
integration, like what are you talking
integration
about? Like,
comes
what's this
after
word?
the journey.
Like, what is that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are
preparation
wondering
is
this
before the journey,
and
integration is after the journey.
I start off by simply,
what it's really
first
about,
of all,
from
clarifying
my perspective,
that integration
is
comes
how do
after
you
the journey.
take this
Right, because
single,
preparation is before the
immersive,
journey,
profound,
integration
ineffable
is after
experience,
and then
translate
what it's
these
really about,
changes,
from my
epiphanies,
perspective,
shifts
into
how do
your
you
everyday
take
life. Because as you alluded to, that's what we all
single,
seek.
immersive,
We all
profound,
want to
ineffable
feel better, to
experience,
show up in the
and
world
then
the way that we
translate
seek,
these changes
without having to rely on anything
shifts
external,
into
even
your
if it's
everyday
natural, even if it's
life.
plant medicine. Because as you alluded to, that's what we all seek. And so to me,
We all
it's
want
it's
this
to feel better, to show up in the world the way that we seek,
months, weeks, and years
without having to rely on anything external, even if it's natural, even if it's a plant
becoming
medicine.
The person that you want to be.
And so
the word
to
that
me,
I
it's
often
associate with integration is embodiment.
Days, months, weeks, and
It's
years
this process of embodying the version of yourself that you seek to be in the world,
becoming the person that you want to be. And so
yeah,
the
and
word
integration
that I often
is
associate
important
with
regardless
is
of
embodiment.
the content of your
It's this
experience,
process of
meaning
embodying the version
if
of yourself that you seek
went
to
through
be
an
in the world.
experience where you are feeling all that
and
bliss,
integration
all that
is
love, all that
important
joy in life,
regardless
integration
of
is
the
still pretty
content
important
of
because
your
that
experience,
feeling
meaning
if you
over time.
went through an
And
experience
this is the
where
world that
you
we
are
have to live in.
feeling
Is like
all
this.
that bliss, all that
Here,
love,
here.
all
It's all.
that joy
I
in
tell
life.
folks that it only
Integration
matters
is still pretty
what we bring
important
back
because that
from these
feeling
psychedelic
will
experiences,
fade
because
over time. You and I
And
both
this
know
is the
plenty
world
of
that we
people
have
who
to
have
live in.
had
Is
likely
like
hundreds
this.
of psychedelic
Here,
experiences.
it's all.
But
I
inside
tell
they're
folks
not
that
doing
it
any
only
of the
matters
work.
what
And
we
so
bring
they
back
almost become
from these psychedelic
reliant on these
experiences,
altered
because
states to feel that
you
joy,
and I
feel
both
that
know
bliss,
plenty
feel
of
that
people who have
fulfillment
had
in life.
likely
And I'll
hundreds
also
of
say
psychedelic
that it's obviously
experiences,
very
but inside they're not
for
doing
folks
any
who
of the
go
work.
through, and so they almost become
overwhelming,
reliant
difficult
on these
parts of their
altered states
experience
to feel
because
that
those
joy,
things
feel that
need to
bliss,
be
feel that
processed
fulfillment in
in
life.
life.
Nothing
And I'll
more
also say
painful
that it's
than an
obviously very important
unprocessed
for folks who go
experience where
through
you're
kind of
challenging,
stuck in the doorway,
overwhelming,
difficult
half in,
parts of
half
their
out,
experience,
because
and
those
that can
things
be
need
really,
to be
really
processed.
challenging
It's
for folks.
nothing
So
more painful.
I like what you said about days, weeks,
months,
months, years.
Talk to me about
Kind of
that.
stuck in the doorway,
Half in, half
out.
Why?
And,
First and foremost,
and that can be really, really, challenging. For
what
folks.
would you share
So
with folks about?
I like what you said about days, weeks,
and
months,
stuff like that
years.
for integration. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, the short answer is that integration is a lifelong
and
process.
what would you share with folks
I
about,
there's very distinct
timeline and stuff
phases
like that for integration?
of that integration cycle. And
so,
the 24
the
to
short
48
answer
hours
is that integration is a lifelong
preceding
process.
your psychedelic journey are going to be profound and different, and
there's
just
very
a milestone
distinct
in and of themselves.
phases
And then
of that
you kind of
integration
expand to
cycle.
this
And
first
so,
week after,
the 24 to 48
and then
hours
the first
immediately
month after
preceding
your psychedelic
and then
journey
there's
are going to be
the rest of life
profound
beyond
and different,
that.
and just a milestone in and of
we were
themselves.
chatting just
And
before this episode
you kind
started
of
recording
expand to this first
week
after
how both of us
and
have
then
had
the first
clients
month
who are like,
after,
well, am I missing the
and then
integration
there's
sweet spot?
the rest of life
Mhm.
beyond
Like,
that.
am I hitting this point?
We were
where
chatting just
there's no
before
more
this episode
benefit
started
to be
recording
had.
on
And from my perspective, that
how
doesn't
both of
exist.
us have
The
had
puzzle
clients
pieces
who
fall
are
back
like,
into
well,
place
am I
on their
missing
own
the
timeline.
integration sweet
And
spot?
sometimes we're not ready for
Like,
that major
am I
epiphany or
am I
aha
hitting
moment
this
or
point
connecting
where
of the dots
there's no more
for a
benefit
couple
to be
weeks or
had?
months?
And
From my
after
perspective,
the
that
actual
doesn't
journey
exist.
took
The
place.
puzzle pieces fall back
Mhm.
into place
Yeah,
on their own timeline.
This is the gift and curse
sometimes
of
we're not ready
scientific
for that
research,
major epiphany
because
or
you
aha
really
moment
need
or
it,
connecting of the
right,
dots
to
for a couple
prove
weeks
the
or months after the
efficacy and
actual
just
journey took
legitimacy.
place.
At the
Mhm.
same time, when a study comes out, this is the gift and curse
peak
of scientific
neuroplasticity
research,
of the brain
because you really
post-psilocybin
need it,
experiences within
right,
this range.
to
It puts a lot of
prove the
pressure on people.
efficacy
To be like, oh
and
man,
just
I got
legitimacy. At the
96
same time,
hours
when
for
a
me
study
to,
comes out, and
figure
says,
out
peak
everything, figure it all
neuroplasticity of the
out,
brain
and
post
whatnot,
psilocybin
and that
experiences
can put
within
a
this
lot
range,
of
it puts a lot of pressure
on
on
the
people
experience.
to be like, oh
For
man,
me,
I've realized that
96
life
hours for me
experience
to
actually helps
figure
together
out
for some
everything,
integration
figure it
things.
all
So
out,
I'll
and
have
whatnot,
a
and that
psychedelic
can put a lot
experience,
of
and then a few
pressure
years
on the
later,
integration
I'll
experience.
have
For
a
me,
life
I've
experience,
realized
whether it's
that
traveling or
life
conversation with a
experience
friend or
actually
something
helps to
happening in my
re-anchor
life, which
some
then
integration
re-anchors.
things.
So I'll have
Whatever that was,
a psychedelic
in that psychedelic
experience, and then a few
experience
years
from a while ago.
later,
And I'm like,
I'll have a life
okay.
experience, whether it's
I
traveling
get
or
that
conversation
now.
with a friend,
All the
or
way
something happening in my
from,
life, which then continuing to
re-anchors
process really
whatever that was
bewildering
in that psychedelic
and
experience
challenging
from a while ago.
things
And
as
I'm like,
well. So
okay.
Michael Pollan,
I
he
get that
is
now.
a lot
All
of folks
the
know
way
his name. He
from,
wrote a book called How to Change
continuing
Your
to
Mind.
process
He has a
really
Netflix documentary out, which
bewildering
has
and challenging,
brought a lot of things as well. So
attention to psychedelics.
Michael
He talks about this
Pollan,
word
he
ineffable.
is a lot of folks
And
know
I
his
think
name. He
that
wrote a book called How to
is a
Change Your
pretty
Mind. He
accurate
has a Netflix
description
documentary
from things that are
out, which
hard
has,
to describe,
brought a
things
lot
that are
of
hard to put our finger on,
things that are
attention
hard to
to
explain.
psychedelics. He talks
And
about
what
this
I
word
hear you
ineffable.
saying when you're talking about
And
bringing
I
things
think
back to this
that
world
is
is
a pretty
how do we turn that
accurate
into
description
tangible,
from things that are
actionable,
hard to describe,
things that are hard to put our finger on, things
ways
that are
of
hard
moving
to
forward.
explain.
100%.
And what I hear you saying
mean,
when you're talking about bringing things back
so
to
when
this
we talk
world
about
is
integration,
how do we
part
turn
of the
that into
goal from my
tangible,
perspective
actionable
is to live in those
ways of
beautiful
moving
points
forward.
of ceremony all the
100%.
time.
Mm.
I mean, or at least as much as
So
possible.
when we talk about integration, I mean, part of the
And
goal
so,
from my perspective
I often
is
use this example for clients
to live
in those
when I'm sharing
beautiful
my story,
points of
because I think it's
ceremony all
helpful
the
to
time.
articulate how
Mm.
this whole process
Or at
works,
least as
and
much
so,
as
like,
possible.
there was a period of time
And
where
so,
people would tell me, "Oh, just love
I
yourself."
often
And
use
I'm like,
this example
"Cool,
for
conceptually, I
clients
understand that, but I can't
when I'm sharing my
actually
story because I think it's helpful to
locate that
articulate
feeling,
how this whole
that
process
emotion."
works. And so, like,
And then I
there was
had
a period of
this
time
very
where people would
profound
tell me,
journey,
"Oh, just love yourself." And
with
I'm like,
plant
"Cool,
medicine, where I got to
conceptually, I
experience
understand that, but I
unconditional
can't
self-love for
actually
the first time.
locate
And when
that
I
feeling,
left,
that emotion."
I realized a couple of
And
things.
then I had
One
this
is
this
that
very profound journey.
prior to that, it
with
was like
plant
trying to
medicine
hit
where
a
I got to
target in a
experience
dark room.
unconditional
I didn't even know what I
self-love
was
for the
looking
first
for.
time.
And when
And
I
then once you
left,
got the emotional target
I realized a
in
couple
front
of
of you,
things.
it's like
One
turning the
is that
lights on in the room.
prior
can
to
get
that,
back
it was
there
like trying to
anytime
hit a
with or
target
without
in a dark
medicine.
room.
It doesn't
I didn't
necessarily
even know
mean
what I
it's
was
gonna
looking
be
for.
easy. It takes practice.
And
But
then
like
once you got the
that's
emotional
really
target
to me in front of you, it's like
great
turning the lights on in the
example
room.
what this looks
And you can
like.
get
And
back
so
there anytime with or without medicine.
and this
doesn't
also
necessarily
touches
mean
on
it's
what we
gonna
were
be
talking about
easy. It
last
takes
episode, where like
practice.
thinking only
But
gets you
like
so far.
that's
There's a certain
really
part
to
of this work
me
that's emotional in
a
nature.
great example.
So you
on
can think
what
about
this
self-love
looks
until
like.
you're
And
blue in
so
the face, but until you felt it,
and
it's
this
such a
also
different
touches on what we were
sensation.
talking about last episode, where like thinking
And
only gets you so
when
far.
your
There's a certain
systems
part of
start
this
to
work
come
that's
back
emotional
online
in nature.
into
And so you can
sobriety
think
and
about
the
self-love until you're
default
blue in the face, but until you
you felt it, it's such a different sensation.
Your operating system gets back to baseline. When your systems start to come back, there are parts of you that sobriety can fall back into some of the same grooves, reality, or beliefs, or habits, or patterns. Your operating system gets back as another effect of what you're describing. Not only there are parts of you that actual fall back into some of the same grooves, or in your case, or habits, or patterns, unconditional self-love. But then as it's another, how do I anchor that into my normal life? Because I've been running a narrative first-hand experience of 10, 15, 20 years of, in your case, no self-love, no self-worth, and no then it's like, how do I anchor that into my normal life? Because I've been running a narrative of 10, 15, 20 years in our lives and in our brains, no self-love, that we no self-worth. They're really strong. They're really, really strong. It's all somewhat. So, you can argue is these like grooves that we, and so it then requires in our lives and in our brains and in the ways that we behave. They're really strong. They're really, really strong. Then overcome that. And that takes, you can argue is like time. Programming. That takes time, and so it then requires and it takes effort, a continual effort, an intentional effort into the frequency to then unconditional self-love, like you're saying, that takes time. Acceptance. That takes time, and it takes continual choices, and it takes thing that happens, a continual effort to re-anchor and understanding the frequency, and more compassion for other people, unconditional self-love, like you're saying, or beings. It acceptance all needs a very certain thing that happened to us in our life, embodiment, as you're understanding, and more compassion for other people, create those other animals in our life that can last outside of the psychedelic it all experience. Needs.
So I think this is where I would use this analogy of the garden. So if the ceremony is this process of gardening, you're pulling out those anchors in our life that can last outside of the gunk, the shock, shame, the trauma, the conditioning. So I think this is where I would use this analogy of a garden. So if the ceremony could be compassion, love, this process of gardening, whatever you're pulling out the weeds, right? You're extracting all the gunk, the shock, shame, the trauma, you've weeded and you planted a rose, but if you don't this beautiful rose, anything after that, and that rose could be guess what's going to happen? Love, connection, the rose is going to die, and the weeds are going to come back because that's the way these gardens work. And so, there's an you've weeded and you planted a rose, but if you don't do anything after that, nurture. Guess what's going to happen? New state the rose is going to die and the weeds are going to come back. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And I think we both had clients where there's an aspect of integration that is nurture. It's like, okay, well, what are you doing to nurture the way that you do want to be this in the new state of being in? Nothing. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's not too late. Clients where they're like, we just have to prioritize what it is that you're seeking. Like, okay, well, and that what are you doing to nurture the way, maintaining a new environment, getting the conditions right for that rose to thrive. Like, okay.
Well, yeah, thinking that it's too late. You
just have to prioritize what it is that you're seeking.
Self-sabotage story, and that takes many folks
watering, maintaining a new environment.
There is conditions probably
for rose to thrive.
Times in the thinking that it's neurochemical sense of our brains and the self-sabotage story that many folks share. The psychedelic journey, where there is probably have a better. Times in the better neurochemical sense in which of our brains and then the post these changes and connect these dots of a psychedelic but a part journey of empowering where you through this experience have a better you have a choice format or better if you let's say neglected in which for you to for make months these and changes and then you're starting to feel some shame but a part of empowering that you like, through this experience is knowing way you out have of the frequency of my experience you let's say I neglected integration I kind of skirted this as I had all this stuff and then you're starting to feel that shame and that guilt is going to block you from actually doing anything about it so you have out of the choice of my experience and the now I kind of skirted this as I had all this stuff going on. Well, that shame and that guilt really is not you from actually doing anything probably and so you have time and optimal setting, but that doesn't mean that it's all out the window. Get back on the train.
Yeah, I mean,
of integration.
If we believe that our brains really is not actually changeable,
there's
that means they're changeable with or without the medicine, no matter when you took it. Like they are by definition,
it's all out the window.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it all is about if we believe that our brains are actually changeable, that means they're changeable with or without the medicine, no matter when you took it. Like thrown out the window definition, any change is possible. And so, to me, it all is about the intentionality. Like that's exactly what's going to happen. And so, part of this is maintaining if you've the openness that possibility even thrown out the window. That and integration is past some arbitrary date on your calendar,
unique to each person.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
Through very smooth.
Part of this is maintaining the openness that
I mean, they're all beautiful integration processes, but some are smoother than others, and some folks do a lot of heavy lifting.
Unique to each person.
And some folks will go into ebbs and flows of challenging parts of integration and more graceful.
I mean, they're all beautiful integration processes,
but some are smoother than others. And so some folks do a lot of heavy lifting. And some folks will go into ebbs and flows.
This is an opinion,
challenging parts of integration.
I think integration is actually the most important
parts. If the ceremony for sure needs to happen,
and so it's
the ceremony can be really benefited.
This is
an
opinion
preparation.
For me.
I think
integration. We know that there are folks who walk
into
if the ceremony for sure needs to happen
unprepared.
The ceremony
totally
can
sideblinded.
Really,
actually in the
benefited
process
from preparation
that makes any of that.
But we know that there are folks who
I
walk
think it's
into ceremonies or
70-80%
unprepared
of the actual
totally
work. I don't know
sideblinded.
your thoughts
And
there.
it's actually in the integration
I think that
process
ceremony without
that
integration
makes any
is
of that
just
matter.
Ceremony.
And so I think it's
if all you
honestly,
do is have peace
70-80%
hour windows and nothing changes
I don't
in
know
your
your
day-to-day
thoughts
life.
there.
What
good
good
is
I think that
the peak
ceremony
experience?
without integration is just
like
ceremony.
Like
Most of the people
if
that
all
we
you
work
do
with
is
are
have peak
seeking
experiences
something. They
and
want
6 to 8
change
hour
in their
windows
life,
and nothing
right?
changes
like
in your
better
day-to-day
relationships,
life.
clarity
What
on their
good is
careers,
the
the
peak
ability
experience?
to overcome depression or
Like,
anxiety. Like they're looking for something
most of
real.
the people that we work with are seeking something. They
and
want change in their life.
If nothing
right?
ever
better
leaves
relationships,
past
the
clarity on
ceremonial
their
container,
careers,
what
the
good is any
ability
of this?
to overcome depression or anxiety, like they're looking for something real. I know one of the
go ahead.
And
I was just going to say integration
if
can also be
nothing
super fun
ever
too. There are
leaves
some
past
times
the
where
ceremonial
as you learn a
container, what good
lesson
is
and you
any
get
of
to
this?
really flex it, and then you really get that notion of your capability,
I know
or
one
your
of the-
self-worth, or
I was just
going
gonna
to
say
integration can also
loved,
be
like,
super fun too. There are some
shit's awesome.
times where
it
as
can
you
be
learn a
really
lesson and you get
empowering
to really
and fun
flex it
once you
and then
get
you
past
really get that
those
notion
certain
of
lessons or those
your capability
little
or your
reminders
self-worth,
as well.
or knowing you're enough to be loved.
I know
like,
one of the things that you wanted
that
to
shit's
touch on
awesome.
this episode
Like,
was some
it can
common
be really
mistakes or pitfalls
empowering
that
and
people
fun
make when
once you
integrating,
get
and I'm
past
wondering
that,
if you've
those
got
certain
one or two that
lessons
you
or
want to
those
share.
little reminders as well.
I think it's important to talk about this.
I know one of the
And
things
we
that you
spoke
wanted
about
to touch
this
on
in the
this episode was some
preparation
common mistakes
episode
or
as
pitfalls
well.
that
So
people
I
make
invite
when
folks to
integrating,
go
and I'm
back and
wondering
check
if you've
that
got
out
one or
so
two
that you
wanna
can
share.
get
I think it's
broader
important to
context
talk about
in
this,
the
and we
preparation
spoke about this in the
ceremony
preparation
integration episode as well. So I invite folks to go back and check that out so
there
that you can
are
get some
pitfalls,
broader
I think,
context,
some common
in
mistakes,
the
some things
preparation
to be
ceremony
mindful of
integration when you are in an integration process. Some of which we already
And
talked about.
there are
Meaning that
pitfalls.
it's not
I
aligning
think,
to
some
some
common
timeline
mistakes,
or
some
putting some
things
pressure
to
on
be
yourself that it
mindful
all
of
has to when
look
you are
perfect
in
a
an
certain
integration
degree.
process.
I think
Some of which we already
seeking
talked
perfection
about.
in integration
Meaning
is also
that,
another one of those mistakes.
It's not aligning
and
to some
pitfalls
timeline
as
or putting
well.
some pressure on
I
yourself
think
that it all
the
has to
one that I want
look
to
perfect
highlight the
in a certain
most
degree.
is
I
folks who
think
feel like they don't
seeking
need
perfection
integration.
in integration
They
is
have this
also another one of
experience,
those
it's,
mistakes and
I'll
pitfalls
sign some words of judgment.
as well.
It's amazing. It's
think
changed my
the
life forever.
one that I
all
want
that.
to
They're like, I'm
highlight
good.
the
They're like, I
most
don't need
is
it.
folks who
Or
feel like they don't
there are some
need
folks
integration.
who
They have this
start a
experience,
process, and it's a
I'll
little
sign some
too
words of judgment.
challenging.
It's
Amazing.
a little too difficult.
It's changed my life
And
forever.
so
all
they
that. They're like, I'm
back
good.
themselves
They're like, I
out
don't
of
need
it,
it.
or
Or
there are
maybe
some
try
folks
to avoid
who
it and tuck it
back
start a process
where it came
and
from.
it's a little
and
too
so that's
challenging.
the number one
it's a little piece
too
is that
difficult.
it does not matter
And so
how
they
seasoned you
back
are,
themselves
how
out of it, or they maybe try to
exploratory
avoid
you
it
are,
and tuck
how
it
much
back
existing
where it came from.
self-discovery
And so
practice that's
you
the
are.
number one piece.
Everybody
is that
needs
it does not
integration.
matter how
in
seasoned
these
you
psychedelic
are,
experiences,
how
and
ultimately you have a
exploratory
choice.
are,
I think
how
for every
much,
person
existing
but I invite
self-discovery
folks
practice
to
you are.
choose the
Everybody
integration
needs
route
route because it's very in the psychedelic hard to do some of the stuff by yourself. Ultimately, you have a choice. The mind is very powerful. Every person. You can talk yourself in and out of anything. I invite so that level of accountability, the integration route, because your own self-expression and just hard to do like you're talking about by yourself. Don't you want to give yourself the best chance? You can talk yourself the best odds of bringing that level of accountability, your daily life. And then another one that we have kind of touched on, like you're talking about, on ceremony. Don't you want to give yourself the best chance and ends the best when you consume the bringing the stuff into your daily life? I know you talk and then to your another one that we have kind of touched on is the emphasis on ceremony.
I think the other one that I
thinking
get a lot
that this healing process
like,
starts and ends when you've consumed the substance and then
really
when it wears off.
Type
I know you talk to your clients about that.
Perfectionist,
quite
very
often.
Cognitive, cerebrally.
Yeah,
oriented
I think the other one that I get a lot
will
is
often
like
express that it like they're not sure if it worked or not, or
really
they don't
kind
know
of
if it was successful or not because they can't cognitively make sense of
very
what happened.
cognitive,
or remember,
or remember
parts where folks are like, I can't put together a linear
like they're not
story
sure if it worked
of what
or not,
happened.
Or they don't
so
know if it was
did it
successful
work?
or not because
work?
they can't
Yeah.
cognitively.
And it's
make
interesting
because
like that
happened.
in and of itself
or
is a
remember,
judgment.
Or
if you recall our last episode
I can't
on
put together a
preparation, we
linear
talk about expectations,
story
right?
of what
It's
happened.
Like, okay, well,
so did it work?
What
did
was
it not
your
work?
expectation that you were
and
going
it's
to
interesting because like that in and of itself is a judgment.
It's not
if
real.
You recall
if you don't
our last episode on
like
preparation,
what
we talk about expectations
here,
right? It's like, okay,
what
I want to make very, very clear.
What was your
expectation
that you were going to understand every part
well
of this, or that it's not
a
real
if
you don't understand it, or like what is
transcend
the
your cognitive mind because they're actually
what I want to make
affecting
very, very
clear
to folks who are listening, and we explain
and so
this
a
to our clients
subconscious
as
shift
well,
can
occur without you cognitively knowing which lever got flipped up or down.
Or it's a bodily or somatic
mind
process.
because they're actually affecting
a process of the nervous system.
The subconscious.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if
you
can identify all the muscle groups that are spasming for you,
and
or it's a bodily or somatic
or
process.
why
there's an emotional process of the nervous system to it. It just matters. It
that
doesn't matter if you
allow that process
can identify all the muscle groups that are spasming for you,
and
have somebody to say, "Hey,"
or
I've worked with clients who have been through release. This is fairly common. It just matters that because some things that happen in the post psychedelic experience, it can be bewildering. And to have somebody to say, "Hey, I've worked with clients who have been through this.
You're
this
still
is fairly common
release
and fairly
process,
normal
which
because
for some folks
some things that happen in the
like,
post psychedelic
a little bit of support
it can be bewildering.
And then that's where talking
because
to
the process
can be
is
helpful
beyond
for them to be like,
it might be this
ceremony,
could be that
you're still having
this
clearly
process, which for
safe,
some folks are like, I don't know what the hell is
just
fine,
and
you
like,
can
I get a little bit of support and guidance?
Just having that little bit of
reassurance,
talking to a professional can be helpful for them to be like, it might be this, could be that in processing.
You're clearly
medically safe, and you're talking to me just fine, and
so
all those things. And so just having that little bit of reassurance, I also think can be helpful.
That haven't been through this.
In integration off a psychedelic I say immediately once you are out of the peak experience, but a part of me also wanted to say that you're also integrating as you are going through the experience. Integration to a degree. But I say immediately always share with folks that you are just important for you to be present. Part of me also wanted to say what's happening because you're also will have a lot of time as you are going through the experience to a degree. Think about, but maybe we try to make sense and it never makes sense. Just like all that for you to be present in the experience. I find this actually being another pitfall because you will have a lot of time to kind of ponder, make sense of, think about, but you try to make sense and it never makes sense. Like all that stuff is okay, and find this actually being another pitfall for folks, while they're in the experience, kind of a conversation of integration, takes them out of the experience ceremony, but which is a little bit different than an insight. Analyze, right? An insight is almost like the plan and the
spontaneous,
all that. Right? There's this thing, experience, which is instead of planning and orienting around, which is a little bit different than
that. Trying to figure it
out. An insight is almost
for sure detrimental.
It's spontaneous,
for sure. Right? There's this thing. Right. Instead of
solve the puzzle,
orienting
around
it,
exactly.
So
that trying to figure it out, clear that this starts the second your journey is done,
for sure,
and you're in this process of once again the word shows
solve
up,
the puzzle,
exactly, because there's a part of that journey where you can feel like you're outside. It's very clear that this starts the second your journey is done, and you're in this process of
once again, the word shows up, that reintegrating into your body. What is right? Because there's a part of that journey where you can feel like you're outside of yourself. I just want to make it really clear that come back for those of you who may have had a psychedelic experience in the past, and you're listening to this, and you're like, "Well, I probably could." That officially starts what is never too late a lifelong process of integration. And I just want to make it really clear that integration process. For those of you who may have had a psychedelic experience in the past, and you're listening to this, and you're like, "Well, I probably could use some of that." It's never too late.
Another
to
pitfall
start.
that I see
You
folks
can always
encountering is thinking that the integration process is a linear
or psychedelic
process,
experience was
meaning that it increments from 1% to 2%. Another pitfall that I see like this step ladder approach is thinking that the integration process is a linear. The integration process has meaning that it increments from 1% to 2% to 3%, depending on step ladder approaches, and there may be times fairly feeling more. The integration process has a lot of ebbs and flows, or it's very nuanced, more and complex, depending on anxiety-ridden, challenging things, and difficult there may things be to address and overcome. Feeling in the pursuit of actually addressing them in the integration process, it actually more of those may still feel it. So I have folks anxiety-ridden, want to come in addressing their anxiety, and they come out and they're like, "I'm still anxious in the pursuit, and I'm still having some of these addressing them in the integration and actually process. It might be a little bit stronger because I'll still feel it." So I have folks this is why ego death want to come in addressing their anxiety. It's all about come out and they're like, sidestepping these things, which means that still as you sidestep them, when you come back into and actually it might be a little bit stronger, because some of those things can come back with a vengeance. This is why ego death is bullshit. And some of those things can it's all about even more sidestepping, and so that's why it's important that as you sidestep them, when you come back into your sober therapy mind, and then also have some of those things can come back with a vengeance, and also some of those things can show up even more so that present. And so that's why it's important to have all of the unknowns in the psychedelic ceremony. You can approach go to therapy stuff, and then also have a psychedelic professional too. And also to have some tools and frameworks so that the same way you approach all the unknowns in the psychedelic ceremony, you can approach the full range of emotion in integration too.
Everything from peace to love to compassion makes me want to highlight sorrow to loss to frustration to
every color of the rainbow.
To experience literally the full range of emotion. And so this whole thing of like everything from peace to love to compassion to grief to sorrow to loss to frustration to
every color of the rainbow. And now there are some choices you have to make.
So this whole thing of like I'm trying
how safe and supported do I feel moving towards this thing, like this anxiety,
not a good recipe
or this pain
for life,
or this, and now there are some choices, or how stable am I feeling, how safe and supported do I to be able to towards this thing, right, this anxiety, or maybe actually a little bit of sleep, a little bit of rest, a little bit of taking care of my needs. How stable am I feeling? What's the most emotionally important to be able to, and so at each juncture of integration, or maybe actually a little bit of sleep, a little bit of rest, a little bit linear process, taking care of my needs is actually everything has the gradient upon the same momentum. And so at each juncture that actually doesn't align to your needs in the moment, choices, and when you and so you may need time, a linear process, and take a break from integration, so that everything has come back to it, or have that the same momentum, sit with things, or that actually doesn't. You might say, hey, this is really challenging and overwhelming, and so you may need time around you to rest and take a break from integration and process, so that you can come back to it, or have that aha moment that I need to look at with things, or giving yourself a little bit. You might say, hey, this is really challenging and overwhelming, so let me just get some support around me in the moment, knowing that you have choices and processes. There's so many different layers of integration that I need to look at in the body, giving yourself a little bit of mindfulness, to journaling, and sitting with things as you say, knowing that you have choices. What works for you in the first couple of weeks may not work for you a month or two down the road. In the body, to whatever that is, and so just give yourself a little bit of fluidity. I think here, sitting with things as far as approaching your integration. And
in our last
what works for you in the first couple of weeks may not work for you a month or two down the road, to reinforce whatever that is. And so just give yourself a little bit of fluidity.
Integrate. Part of it is getting really clear
as far as approaching your integration.
That you seek. And in our last few minutes, I want to touch on something which you kind of highlighted, integration, and then just prior prior to this, if you choose to go the supported there's a lot of different ways to integrate. Part of it is getting really clear on the levels and cons that you seek and what it got me thinking about was like just talk about solo versus supported integration, the different ways someone can, if you choose to go the supported route, like what are your options?
Sure, you're talking about more tangibly,
that kind of thing. Yeah, so maybe in our last few minutes we just talk about. I'm sure there's some people who are like, oh, well, I can kind of do this process on my own. And there's a part of me that's like, yeah, on some level you
sure,
can,
you're talking about more
tangibly. There's this thing that happens when we're in a relationship with other humans where I'm sure there's some people who are like, oh, well, I can kind of do this process on my own. And there's a part of me that's like, an opportunity to be, to feel seen and heard and validated in a way that you don't in relationship when you move through this process. Where
what I hear is that psychedelics are best,
and it's an opportunity to be or the most conducive and heard and validated in a way that community,
and we see that
when you move through this process solo. All
indigenous, what I hear is that psychedelic history is gone. It's been done or the most conducive in community. It then becomes your choice on what that community looks like.
All indigenous,
and then the other as far as psychedelic history is gone, sure, all these things are possible, but what's the most effective for you? It then becomes your choice of what that community looks like. For some folks, and then the other component of this that I hear you saying also includes sure solitude and deep contemplation and thinking. What's the most effective? This is a non-dual conversation. What's the most conducive? You're still the one who has to do all the work. And for some folks, it's how the integration process might so that can also range anywhere some solitude and deep contemplation and thinking, because this is a non-dual conversation. You're still there's a lot of medicine work and just having, but it's how it's better fostered. And so that can range anywhere from loving and non-judgmental. Let me back up. So at a minimum, there's a lot of medicine. Those people in your life, seek them out, hold space, share your hear you out. And
the flip side of that is don't share with people who can't hold it.
Right, because that can be really that can really jack up your whole integration process. It falls upon and share years of non-supportive people.
The flip side of that is don't share.
You go into a spiral of your own judgment, and then
am I the crazy one?
That can really jack up your whole integration process. Yeah, be really thoughtful. I think years of non-supportive people. Then they judge your discernment, and you go into a spiral of your own judgment, and then
am I the crazy one?
Right, and you have a right in all of it. So you have a right. Be really thoughtful. Your choice. I think how much or how little to share, about who to share, your discernment, your discretion, that you share these experiences.
So what you share ranges
from you having, and you have a right in solo. You have a right process. This is your choice. Can be helpful. How much or however to share. Know that who to share with powerful, and you can draw part of narratives, all of that. So these things. So it ranges from you having your own solo who can process, you, which can be helpful. However, know that the mind is powerful. Then I think the next level is friend, family member, somebody in your life that you trust or feel confident around. People who can those all can be helpful. Hearing. There's that accountability. I always fall into the realm of. Then I think the next level is friend, family member, somebody in your life that you trust or feel work in psychedelics.
They've been there before. Those all can be
helpful. Right. But I always fall into the realm
there's a lines start to get real blurry when you start involving friends and family where there's pre-existing relationships. They've been there before. Different wants and needs and emotions.
I just think you have to be mindful. You have to be mindful on their lines start to get real blurry when you start involving friends and family feel like where there's pre-existing when they're asking their friends and family to hold space like wants this. And needs and emotions. You have to be mindful. You have to be mindful on their boundaries. I'll list off a couple of different things. And then a lot of folks I feel like they're a burden when they're asking their friends and family to hold space like this. So psychedelic professional, get some facilitator. Maybe it's the person who actually held space. I'll list off a couple of different
which does have some benefits.
Which has a lot of benefits because you don't have to go through this reinterpreting, retelling psychedelic piece.
And they can see things that you're not always aware of.
Maybe it's the person who actually held space for you in ceremony.
Which does have some benefits.
Other viable options a lot of benefits because you don't have to go through this reinterpreting, retelling. So there are folks
and they can see things that you're not always aware of.
Kind of self-proclaim as psychedelic 100%. Friendly. You got to do some other viable options. See if they work with the same substance, have the same friendly, mental health area of content, so they're exposed to stuff like that. Who,
this is cool though, because in the
modern
day legal climate, you got to do some vetting of the few places where licensed mental health professionals can actually area of content that they're exposed to. So if you do have a desire to work, this is cool though, because in the modern day legal climate, this is one of the few places where licensed mental health professionals can actually legally support you in your journey.
Right. A really cool way is if you already have established a relationship with this therapist, and maybe you've been working with them for a number of months or years, and they're psychedelic friendly, you go off and have your experience in a supported, really cool way. And then that likely will bring up a lot of relationship to a therapist that already knows you, already with them for a number of months or years. But if that's not psychedelic friendly, you go off and have your experience. It's also okay to go out and supported, safe setting. And then that likely will bring up a lot of content to a therapist professional that knows you, or there are also integration specialists out there in the realm of, it's also okay to go out and seek folks who have other modalities, whether it's oriented mental health professional movement. There are also integration specialists out there, and then also there are integration circles, even just being a part of a community, folks who have other modalities, whether it's in-person community. Body work, also be really helpful, other things like that. I think I've covered most. And then also there are integration circles out there, even just being a part of a community.
I think that's mostly everything. The peer-to-peer communities are really great, and they're different than pre-existing relationships with friends and family.
As far as what's out there,
there's a lot of people that find a lot of value. I think that's mostly everything. The peer-to-peer communities are really great, and they're different than pre-existing relationships with friends.
Yeah. So luckily, we're in an environment where there's a lot of people that find a lot of value from being. And I think that the political climate, all of this interest in psychedelics will hopefully continue to move in that trajectory. Yeah. So luckily, we're in an environment where there's more support out there than there used to be. Today, and I think my number one takeaway for folks is psychedelics will hopefully go towards that thing, go towards that stuff, lean into that. About wraps up our episode today. My number one takeaway for folks is it is so painful to go towards that through a process and have it interrupted into. So all of this is possible, and each one of you out there has a lot of choice on your support, your care. It is so painful to be. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for our community of listeners. So all of the supporters and each one of you out there, other facilitators on your support. Let us know how we can do better. Let us know what's been exciting. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for our community. Listeners, community, and even recommending clients, other facilitators for us to address. So let us know how we can download episodes. Let us know what's been exciting for you in these conversations by cannabisradio.com. Subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, and even recommending Spotify, new topics, things for us to address. Anywhere where you get your, you can download episodes of the Psychedelic Passage podcast. Look for all our episodes by going to cannabisradio.com. Subscribing to the show on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere where you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next time.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts, and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast, republication, or retransmission of this program without proper consent is prohibited.